Now, once the uh, pyruvic acid is formed, whether we are talking about prokaryotes or eukaryotes, aerobic mechanism or anaerobic mechanism, or either the obligate mechanism of respiration or the facultative mode of respiration, the first product is always going to be pyruvic acid, and it is formed in the cytoplasm. So it is common to all respiring organism. And now this pyruvic acid, its further processing depends upon whether the oxygen is available inside the cell or if the oxygen is not available. So the mode of the fate means the future, what will happen to it. So this pyruvic acid, what will happen to this pyruvic acid depends upon whether oxygen is available or whether the oxygen is not available. If the oxygen is not available, then the pyruvic acid finally enters into fermentation. And if the oxygen is available, that means mitochondria is also available. That means eukaryotic system. So if oxygen is available, and the organism will be definitely eukaryotic organism, so mitochondria is available. So in that case, pyruvic acid enters from cytoplasm into mitochondria. And as it enters mitochondria, it will enter into a cycle called as Krebs cycle. So Krebs cycle occurs inside the mitochondria, that means eukaryotic system. So whether we talk about the carbohydrates, because definitely we don't consume glucose, we are consuming complex food sources for us, or you can say we are consuming complex type of carbohydrates, or you can say polysaccharides and disaccharides. So because we are consuming carbohydrates which are complex, so first of all they undergo digestion, and after digestion glucose is formed, and then this glucose undergoes glycolysis in the cytoplasm of every living organism, and finally this glucose gives rises to two molecules of pyruvic acid. Now in the absence of the oxygen, that means anaerobic respiration will occur. So there are two methods possible according to the end product. Either the end product is going to be an alcohol. In that case, the anaerobic respiration is called as alcoholic fermentation. So you can see the reaction which I have mentioned here. Ethanol or ethyl alcohol C2H5OH is formed in this process, and there is liberation of carbon dioxide. That's why bubbles come out. Carbon dioxide of bubbles along with some amount of energy. And if the pathway leads to the formation of lactic acid, in that case it is called as lactic acid fermentation, and this is how you represent lactic acid, C3H6O3 and some amount of energy. And in the presence of oxygen, the respiration would be called as aerobic respiration, and in this case pyruvic acid, two pyruvic acids coming out from one glucose, will enter into Krebs cycle. That means you have to consider Krebs cycle also two times. If you have to do the calculation for one glucose molecule complete energy, then definitely, because there are two pyruvic acids, so each pyruvic acid enters into one Krebs cycle, so you have to consider it two times. And finally this liberates carbon dioxide and water along with abundant amount of energy. And the amount of energy you can understand from here, 18:1 is the ratio of ATP synthesized. So energy synthesized by anaerobic respiration, if considered as 1, then the amount of energy liberated by aerobic respiration would be 18. This is the ratio. So you can easily make out anaerobic respiration does not liberate sufficient or good amount of energy, but aerobic respiration leads to complete combustion. If you remember your junior classes statements, aerobic respiration causes complete combustion of the food into carbon dioxide. But here you can still see that these are still organic compounds, so they still have the potential, these molecules still have the potential to enter into respiration. But because these organisms do not have the mechanism to use them further, so these things will simply go waste for them. So they are unable to burn or consume the complete carbohydrate. That means they are not able to break all the CC bonds. If you remember this in the beginning of the chapter, I told you, because they are not able to break these bonds completely, so much of the food will simply go waste, or you can say many of these bonds will simply go waste. So energy liberated by them is very less when compared to the aerobic organism, because they are going to break each and every bond that bond between carbon-carbon. That's why they liberate only CO2, then abundant amount of energy. I hope this point is clear to you. So now let's understand what exactly is fermentation. Fermentation is basically of two types. According to these, you have understood alcoholic fermentation, and the second type is called as the lactic acid fermentation. Now what happened in the alcoholic fermentation? It is very common among yeast, which is also called in biological terms as Saccharomyces. Saccharum stands for carbohydrates or sugar, and myco word stands for fungus. So the fungus which feeds upon sugar, that means it is yeast. So alcoholic fermentation, there are three steps I have explained, that how exactly it happens. The first step is going to be glucose undergoing glycolysis to produce pyruvic acid. So C6H12O6 undergoes glycolysis to prepare CH3COCOH, which is the pyruvic acid. And remember, one molecule will give rise to two molecules, and each of these two molecules now enter into the fermentation. So during fermentation, there are two steps in alcoholic fermentation.